Key Digital, the experts in digital audio-visual and control systems.
Welcome. Today we're going to talk about Compass Control Pro, Key Digital's control and integration system, designed for presentation spaces like conference rooms and huddle spaces, classrooms, lecture halls, and more, bar and restaurant, digital signage applications, video walls, for example, operations and network operations and control centers, houses of worship, residential applications, and more. We're going to talk about those applications in a moment, how we hand designed our GUI to ensure that it is a perfect match for those applications. You're going to use Compass Control Pro anytime you want your iOS device to be a complete control system. You can control everything, not just the Key Digital devices, with Compass Control. So we can control third-party manufacturers, as we'll show you in a moment. So it's a little like nowadays how there's an app for everything, right? Well, it's a little like we have an app to rule all apps with Compass Control Pro. You could do a custom GUI or drag and drop programming. And because it is such a modern control system, we can build in embedded web pages, and we have support for real-time streaming protocols. That's your RTSP video formats from things like surveillance cameras and more. And of course, because it's from Key Digital, there's native control and even built-in master controllers like what we see here with our AV over IP system that you recently learned about. So what are the design considerations when you are going to be working with Compass Control? You want to work with Compass Control, you want to turn your iOS device into a professional control system, or your customer's iOS device into a professional control system. Well, you just need to count up how many devices are you controlling, and you need to determine if they will be controlled via IR, infrared, RS-232, or TCP/IP. You combine all the IR and RS-232 devices, and that's how many ports you need in your control hardware. Some hardware is built in, some hardware is external if you're not working with our 4K AV over IP system, for example. Then you consider the other devices. For example, audio DSP, lighting control systems, security systems, and more. And you look at what modules we have already available. So those are going to make your life much, much easier as the programmer and the installer. You need to decide based on your level of training and based on your client's wishes. Is this going to be a modular or custom GUI? You need to make sure you have proper Wi-Fi coverage throughout the whole job site. Anywhere your customer is going to be walking with their iPhone or iPad and opening up the Compass app to control the system, you need to make sure you have proper coverage there. And then finally, you put all those things together, and we have a network of programmers we could refer to you. If this is your first project, don't worry. We can make sure that you are happy and your client is happy. We can refer you to a programmer, which you will work for hire with, of course, and ensure that it's a rock solid system, your first time or your 10th or your 100th system. So I mentioned about some of our the modules that are available, bidirectional control modules. We have a long list of Compass Alliance partners, and we have all of those modules listed on our webpage. So you could look and see, take a look at screenshots of those modules, and even in many cases, we have videos of those modules in action. You just go to the Key Digital webpage and you go to Products, Compass Control, Bidirectional Partner Modules is what that's called, and you could browse through that entire library. What makes Compass so unique is that we're the first control system that was designed to use and leverage the iOS platform and make iOS its brain. So even many years ago, when Apple was a struggling company, who was using Apple Macintosh products were people that needed processing. So and every time there's a new iOS, our processors just get stronger and more powerful as those releases are unveiled. So all of the controllers in Compass will live on the network. It's a network-based control system. That means all of your master controllers, the hardware, and it means your iOS devices. So you could essentially have an unlimited amount of controllers possible, as long as you have IP addresses for them. You could even communicate globally to your job site. It doesn't have to just be over a local area network. You could use the site IP address to communicate from outside of that local area network. And there's no master or slave controller. So in a lot of control systems, you will have, you'll communicate to one master controller, and it will then forward commands if you have so many devices that you need a second controller. In our case, they all just have a unique IP address. And if you have an IP device, which so many devices now are controlled over IP, they are controlled directly from the iOS device. So that it doesn't have to go through the master controller. It's more immediate, and it also doesn't occupy ports on your hardware. So there's 3 levels of certification available, 4 levels, pardon me. They are called C1, C1 Plus, C2, and C3. You can get them all online. C1 will teach you what is the compass control system, establish some terminologies and foundational knowledge that everyone should know, not only your programmers, but also your system designers, your salespeople, etc. C1 Plus is our drag and drop programming. That's the modular-based programming that we will show your GUI of throughout this short presentation even. And we'll teach you how to program with that. Drag and drop the modules, create your macros, you're good to go. If you need to create your own module because it's a unique device we don't have already, we teach you how to do those foundational things like creating the command sets and linking it to the graphical elements in C2. And then C3 goes further, where you could just totally build a custom GUI. And that's what Compass was originally, was completely custom. Now we have these modular programmings available. So let's compare and contrast. Well, we're looking here at 2 rows of iPad images. Top row is our current modular 2.0, we call that. At the bottom is one out of an infinite amounts of examples of a custom GUI. So in the modular, it's, you have your device modules from that list on our webpage, right, that I pointed you to before. You'll build a tree for each scenario. For example, you see the presentation button. What are the devices in the system that the user would require access to when they're using the room for a presentation, right? And you can create the priority of that list. So we kind of see that on the scenarios is the first thing, and then those devices, that list, we actually call that contents. We'll go into more detail on that in just the next few slides. Meanwhile, Pro is how Compass Control started. Compass Control was a completely custom GUI. You could do whatever you'd like for example, in this image that we see at the bottom, this integrator went to the website of their customer and said, I'm just going to grab some images from their website. How can they argue with that? And the control system essentially became like a digital signage screen when it wasn't in use. And you could still add modules to a custom program, by the way, and save loads of time. So here is our module project version 2.0, as we call it. We're about to show you. This is our 3rd generation Compass GUI. So this was not the first, not the second. We continuously evolve, and new trends come out in graphic design, and we keep learning. We keep applying all this expertise we collect over the years. And this time, as I alluded to previously, we made sure that our GUI that we have with the modular 2.0 fits these 7 core applications that you see here, and it applies and it fits and it works. There's no square peg in a round hole here for all 7 applications. And we went through that process with our beta testers ahead of time, and we're very, very pleased with this GUI. And now it's been out for a few years, in fact. So let's walk you through the GUI. On the intro page, if you will, we call that the scenarios page, where you see those. Here we see a conference room, we see the 4 scenario buttons. They are presentation, conference call, video conference, and device controls, right? Then when you press one of those buttons, it'll advance you to the next page where we have our contents space in the B section there, and our module space, the device modules that we see. So the scenarios, think of that as your table of contents for your usage of your system. When you press that button, it will advance you to the next page where we see the contents list and we have the module space. But optionally, you might want to press presentation and have a load of commands sent to configure the room for presentation, right? So it just depends on the application. In a residential application or in a sports bar, you may have a list of zones there. And you press, for example, dining room, and it advances you, but it may not send any commands when you press dining room. Or here in a conference room application, we press presentation, it will turn on the projector, drop the screen, dim the lighting, and select your primary source. So that brings us to the contents page because we press scenarios, it advances. And this shows you all of the modules within the system, for example, within the scenario, I should say. You can build those contents buttons. It's essentially button building, right? And when I press those buttons, more things can happen, more macros, if you will. So if I press sources, for example, we see the list of sources for who's going to present. If I press Apple TV, maybe I want to also send a command to make sure that the display at the head of the room or the projector is showing the Apple TV, right? That module, or that content space also is where we have the volume control. So if I just jump back, you see that speaker icon towards the top left? You press that button and that content space doubles as its purpose also for volume control. And any device could be your volume device. It could be with a slider if it is a device that controls a discrete level set command, or it could be incremental, which is just your plus, minus, and mute. For example, if you're using your display as the volume device. Every scenario, you can choose a volume device for that. In the module space, we can show things like multi-zone devices. Go back to that bar restaurant. You probably don't want to have to choose every TV, go back to the scenarios page, choose the TV all over again and reroute a different source, go back, reroute another source. Having a multi-zone device module is very helpful. But in the case of a conference room or a bedroom, there is going to be just a single display in that room and you don't want to see all the other zones. So that is what we call an AV endpoint, for example, like a switcher. And that could even be a matrix that gives you that GUI for the AV endpoint. We have loads of modules. Plenty of our focus lately has been on video and teleconferencing devices. Of course, your AV sources, Apple TV, DirecTV, etc., DSP devices. We have loads of partner devices there for you to choose from. So how about the hardware? Well, as I alluded to earlier, we have external master controllers and we have built-in master controllers. Here's the smartest master controller we have at Key Digital. Currently, it's KD-MC1000. Why do I say it's smart? Because it has a built-in IR learner. It can actually store scheduling events and variables, whereas the other devices are more or less just executing the IR, RS-232, or voltage commands. This has more brains to it. So oftentimes you'll still have this in a system, even if you have built-in master controllers in the other hardware. So what does this do for you? Well, we have these 6 multifunction ports. They're 3.5 millimeter stereo, TRS, tip ring sleeve. They could be used as anything, and it's very easy to set them as whatever you want them to be. They're an IR device, they're bidirectional RS-232, they could be voltage triggers, or they could be sensors for voltage, composite video, or PCM digital audio. There's a built-in IR learner, as I mentioned, and we have a very good graphical tool for IR learning. We also have CX800. Now, if you recall our AV over IP video, CX800 looks like basically an off-board those three control ports of the IP922, IP1022. Now, what CX800 has that MC1000 even does not is it does have variable voltage levels from 5 to 12 volts. It's PoE powered, which is very convenient. So think of the MC1000 often as located in the rack. CX800 can be located in the rack, but sometimes it's located in the zone or in a specific area as well because it is so compact, PoE powered, and it even is a 2-port LAN switch, so you could pass through network to a connected device. And that does lead us to our 4K AV over IP encoders and decoders. The 1022s and 922s, as you recall, have 3 multifunction ports on Phoenix connector. They're transmit, receive, and ground, or IR out and ground, with the 3rd pin open. And the IP822 encoders, decoders have 2 of the multifunction I/O ports. So think about that. You're already using Key Digital and you know about our 4K AV over IP devices. That control system is built in already, ready for you to leverage by learning about Compass Control Pro, by learning how to program, or by working with one of our referred programmers for your system. You have here, I think we went over this in that AV over IP video, we have 25 endpoints. We have 10 AV sources, or video sources. We have 14 plus 1 displays. So that's 25 922 encoders, decoders would be 75 port control system. So you could control all the sources, all the displays, the security system, the streaming audio, the lighting system, the thermostat, the amplifier, and more. No problem, it's all covered. Whereas if you're not using this, if you're not using Key Digital's AV over IP system, that's extra dollars and extra space in the rack, just adding to the value of what we do. All of our master controllers, all of our Compass Control hardware is configured with Key Digital Management Software Pro. And we also do have a master controller device manager that is part of the Compass Control software suite. How is Compass Control programmed? We call that Compass Navigator, and that is designed for PC. So it's kind of ironic. It's loaded into an iOS device, but it is the programming software is designed for PC. If you have a PC emulation on your Mac, like VMware or Parallels, you can use it. You're going to need a widescreen monitor, though. We've had folks come to class with those. That was a trend years ago. Was those little notebook laptops? Ooh, did I feel for that guy's eyes? Once you get your C1 certification, which you could get online, free of charge, then you could download our software suite. As I mentioned, Compass Navigator, the Master Controller Device Manager, IR, RS-232, and TCP/IP database managers are how you can learn IR codes or import Pronto hex codes, how you can create RS-232 and TCP/IP strings to give you everything you need to create those custom modules, and then you can get programming. Once you're done programming, you want to load it to your iPad, obviously. And how that works is each iOS device requires a license. So there is a cost for each iOS device in your system. And that model is KD Pro CL1, Pro CL4, Pro CL6, or Pro CL8. Those multi-packs there will increase your profit margin. And you could associate the license key with an iPad. And if they update their iPads down the line, or an iPad gets dropped or broken, we transfer that license over to your new iPad without any charge. The license is reassignable. You do your programming, the iPad is licensed. How do you get it into the iPad? Well, Apple, of course, doesn't like you to connect the USB and load in, so we got creative. We created our cloud. The PC computer running Navigator uploads the project to our cloud. You do require internet for that, but nothing else about Compass requires internet, just a local area network. Downloading it to the iPad is manual. You have to press a button. It's not an auto push. That server, if you've done our Compass Control classes online, you know that server where you're uploading to is also secure storage. So it's a way that you don't have to worry about ever losing a Compass Control file, because once you upload it to our cloud, it's always there until you either write over it because you've loaded another project but by the same name, or yeah, that's it. That's the only reason you would not have the project file anymore. So save as, right? That's it. That's Compass Control Pro. It's going to be a really great way for you to sell integration into the conference rooms, classrooms, all those applications we just talked about, right? Presentation spaces, digital signage, house of worship. We have some really great videos. If you want to see more about the Compass installations, go on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Masha KDS, or you could just go there from our webpage, of course, and you'll see a lot of videos. And we also love including pictures on our LinkedIn pages and more. Reach out to the sales guys. They have loads and loads of those images and videos that they can send your way. That's sales@keydigital.com.